Right. We are on page 124. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you to everybody who's here on Zoom, to those who are joining on Facebook Live, to those who are joining in person, and also to those who are joining on Torah Anytime. Thank you, Torah Anytime, for hosting this year, for great quality Torah content. TorahAnytime.com is the place to go. Page 124, Parasha Toldos. We are now moving away from the stories of Avraham, and we're now at the story of Yitzchak. We moved from the story of Avraham to Yitzchak. This week's Pasha is the only Pasha that deals with Yitzchak, and then starting next week, we will start off with Yaakov, then we'll move on to Yaakov and Yosef, and that's going to take us all the way to the end of Bereshis. Yitzchak only has a very short role to play within this week's Pasha, and that's it. We don't read much about Yitzchak. Now, why is that? It's very interesting to find that Avraham Avinu, big character, 3 Pashas all about him, all sorts of stories. Avraham Avinu, first of all, the Torah doesn't speak about it, but we know about it from the Midrashim. Avraham Avinu throwing himself into the fiery furnace for God. Avraham Avinu leaving his house, and Avraham Avinu ending up in Egypt, and Paro taking his wife. The battle with the 4 and the 5 kings, Avraham Avinu with the bris milah, Avraham Avinu having the guests, Avraham Avinu davening for Sodom, Avraham Avinu then having to kick his son out, finally having a child, the binding of Isaac, the burial of Sarah Imenu. We read about Avraham Avinu all the time. What do we read about Yitzchak? Very little. Yitzchak has some kids, then he's in Gerar and he manages to hack it out with Avimelech. He wants his son to prepare him some food so he can give him a blessing. He gets fooled. End of Yitzchak. Okay, pardon? Yitzchak's on a need-to-know basis. Pardon? Okay, so that what we say about over here, this is interesting. I think this is part of this we spoke already about, but I'd like to add another point to this. That there are, first of all, I think it's important to note that there are different traits within Judaism, and they're both traits that have their own way. So Avraham Avinu had the trait of chesed. Avraham Avinu was known for his great kindness to the rest of the world. And that's what we read about Avraham Avinu. When the 3 malachim come to Avraham Avinu, he's hurting, he's in pain. He looks out and he sees these 3 angels and he goes running towards them, even though he's just had a terrible ordeal of a surgery without anesthetic. Right? Remember, having a bris milah is painful anywhere beyond a few years old. Right? I think the little children, you watch them, the way they recover from it is very, very easy. But I think somebody said, why Rubenstein said that when an adult has it, it's not the same thing. You watch your kids, they get it. You know, I've been to bris milahs where the kids stop crying after a minute. 30 seconds to a minute, done crying. They say, pardon? Drop of wine, quiet. You do the same thing to an adult, it's stitches, it's difficult. So really, it's a serious operation. So Avraham Avinu, after a serious operation, is running after these people. He's bringing them in. He's bringing them all sorts of food, which we spoke about, and going above and beyond anything he had to do to help these people. That's Avraham Avinu's chesed. Avraham Avinu then hears about the people of Sodom that are going to be killed out, and he says, wait a second, God. Is that really right? Is it right to kill out the people of Sodom? Maybe there's 50 righteous people, 45 righteous people. 40, 30, 20, 10, Avraham Avinu pushes the buck because he's trying to do goodness for others, which is why it was such a test for Avraham Avinu to kick his son out. Certain people have no problem kicking their kids out. He's not behaving, out. Just recently on a Friday night, I was walking with my daughter, and I don't know if it was a Friday night, different night, walking with my daughter somewhere, and we saw this little kid, he's banging the door, Mommy! Yeah, kid got kicked out of the house. I think the mother was trying. I think this is like an old way of educating the mother, slightly older. But if you remember kicking your kids out or like putting them behind the door, and he's like, open up the door, I can't. Yeah. The mother probably opened up the door. Are you going to do that again? I promise I'll never come back inside. Yeah. Some parents can manage that. Some parents even just, they look around, they're like, where's my kid? Where's my kid? your kids behind the door, like they're freaking out. They're inside the house, they've just been quiet for 20 seconds. You're still breathing. Are you okay? Yes, I'm glad to hear that. The paranoid parents, especially young parents, are paranoid. They walk into the room with the sleeping baby the first time. They're like, is he breathing? Is he breathing? His stomach is moving. He's breathing. Thank God. Thank God we didn't have a cot death. Yeah, you just like get so paranoid. So Avraham Avinu is like the giving type. Yitzchak, as you said, need to know, but more than that, Yitzchak is what's known Amud HaGevura, Amud HaYira. Yitzchak is known as the pillar of strength, but also the pillar of fear. That means Yitzchak works Yiddishkeit in a very, very different way. There are certain people that work Yiddishkeit totally differently. So, for example, I'll give you a good example. This would be a great example when it comes to Chassidus. In Chassidus, Shmuley, you'll know about this. In Chassidus, there were different grand Rebbes that sort of almost were like the Rebbe of everyone. They became the big Rebbe in Poland. So at one point, you had an individual called the Choza of Lublin. The Choza of Lublin had like 100,000 Hasidim. And the Choza of Lublin used to have a big court and everybody used to get food and used to take care of everybody. And people used to come and used to moan to him about their cow that didn't give milk and about the fact that their daughter didn't have a dowry, etc., etc. And then you move on from there to Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk, the Yidda Kodesh, Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk. And they were very, very different. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk also had like tens of thousands of Hasidim. But he didn't want the whole thing. And he used to come and he used to yell at his Hasidim. He says, you rotzchim, you murderers, you infidels, you terrible people. And people would shake, and after you go, you're like, wow, that was amazing. There's a whole different story. You know, you have the Rebbe that would come out and would hug, give everybody, even, you just feel his whole sermon and his whole speech is like one big envelopment of love. It's like a hug. Have you ever been hugged verbally by someone? You just feel so good. He comes out and says, every Jew matters and every Jew is important, and your little bit of Mishnayos and your little bit of Tehillim is just as important as the great Talmid Chacham who's sitting on his learning all day long. And you feel like, oh, I feel so validated because I'm not the great Talmid Chacham. And then the Kotzker Rebbe came and he used to basically say, who do I need all these guys for? I don't need them. What are they doing? They're all running after me. You're all fakers. You're all phonies. You're all frauds. Very, very different way. Both Hasidim, both Chasidusim, but two totally different paths. Avraham Avinu is like the Choza of Lublin. Avraham Avinu is the path he warms up to everybody. Yitzchak Avinu is the Amud HaGvura, the Amud HaYir. Yitzchak Avinu didn't come to people. He wasn't looking to do Kiruv. And by the way, Kiruv is not done that way. You can't have a Kiruv seminar. Imagine if you had a Kiruv seminar. People came in and says, have a seat. And what's your name? My name is Rabbi Eisenberg. I'm going to be your Kiruv. I'm going to be instructing you today at this seat seminar. Oh, what will we be talking about? Today we're talking about hell. Pardon? Yes, we're going to talk about Gehenna. Now, I'd like to have a volunteer please come to the front. Volunteer comes to the front. He says, would you hold out your hand and close your eyes? Fine, close his eyes, hold out his hand. The guy pulls out a little match, puts the match under the hand. Ow, what are you doing? You think that hurts? Wait till you get to hell. It's much harder down there. Yeah. That would make an impression. You know what impression it would make? What would happen? Everybody would go, I'm out of here. This guy's crazy, right? That's not the way we can have a seat seminar. It's not exactly the best way of going about things. You can try that. In general, you don't go over very, very well doing that. Why? Because people don't take to that. And if you sat down and the people said, well, Rabbi, why should I become religious? Well, very simply, I mean, if you don't want to burn in hell forever, that's why you become religious. That's it. Any other good reason? Well, there's no really good reason to become religious other than the fact that it's a lot less painful if you become religious. Yeah, maybe you might have to go through some pain over here in this world, but it's going to be a lot less painful in the next world. Oh, thank you. Really appreciate it. That's just not going to work. Yitzchak Avinu wasn't, in inverted commas, the cuddly type, right? He wasn't Avram. Yitzchak was the Amud HaYira. And so therefore you'd expect from Yitzchak Avinu very, very little conversation. He's not going out there. He's not inviting guests. He's not having all these parties to bring people close to God. Yitzchak says, look, I'm doing my thing and I do it the way I like to do it. And most people won't be able to hack what I'm doing. And I do my own thing and that's fine. And I continue Yiddishkeit in my own way. And that's another way of doing things. Not everybody's cut out to be this gregarious, charismatic fellow that stands at the front and is nice and friendly to everybody. And we need different types of Jews also. We need some Jews that will go out and bring people close, but we need other Jews that will also say, I am just sitting and learning Torah day and night, and this is what I do my own thing. I don't have to speak to other people. I don't have to bring other people close. Just my own thing. The Gaon of Vilna literally stayed in his room for hours and hours and hours on end. Just sat and learned. And that's how he affected the world. And the entire world at the time, which was full of tremendous people, all looked up to the Gaon of Vilna because he was the Gaon of Vilna. Even though you didn't get to just like sit and shoot the breeze with the Gaon of Vilna. You can just say, hey, Rabbi Eliyahu, how you doing? I'm going back to learn. There was something else. So much so that the Gaon of Vilna once asked the Dubna Maggid. The Maggid of Dubna was very, very famous for giving Musar. And he said to the Dubna Maggid, give me Musar. I'd like you to tell me Musar. He says, me, I can't give you Musar. I can't tell you off. He says, tell me off. So, all right. So he said, fine. He sat down with him. He says, you think you're such a big deal? It's easy to sit in that room and lock yourself up and sit and learn 20 hours a day. Try going out there. Try making a parnasa. Try working. Try meeting people. Try speaking to people. And then try being a tzaddik like you are. Yeah, no big deal. No great shakes in there. No great wonders for sitting in a room and learning all day long. The Vilna Gaon was very, very taken aback by it. He's like, wow. Then after, as he thought about it again, and Vilna Gaon came back to him and says, you know what? Not everybody can sit for 20 hours in a room and learn Torah uninterrupted. He could. And he was the Gaon. He was like the absolute genius of geniuses in that time. So therefore, the Gaon of Vilna, like he's everywhere. Everywhere you look in Torah, the Gaon has something to say about it. And wherever the Gaon said something, it was like, wow, the Gaon of Vilna. That's big. He says, that's also something. That's another way of living. So you might say to yourself, okay, so you have Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu makes a great splash, and Avraham Avinu is very, very impressive. Yitzchak, not so impressive. So I saw a beautiful idea brought over here. I think the Meshech Chochmah says it. So you have, should have written down, I have to start writing down again who says what, because otherwise I start the share. I know what I want to say, but I don't know who said it. So we have an argument over here between Avraham Avinu and Avimelech, and they argue about water. So nowadays we can't imagine arguing about water, but in the days where you had to find water by digging a well and digging into the ground, water was a great resource. There's a reason why almost every single great city in the world is on the banks of either a sea or of a river. Think about it, right? We're on the Irwell. You go down to London, you got the Thames. Paris, you got the Seine. You got the Danube going through Prague, Vienna, Budapest. Wherever you go, the great cities of the past were all surrounded by or were all built around bodies of water because you needed water. There's no point of building a city somewhere in the smack in the center of England where there's no water. How are we going to get water? Well, we're going to walk 6 miles every day. We're going to ride a horse there. Can't ride 6 miles. So we need to be near water. So they built cities around a body of water so that they can have that. Water was a great resource. And that's why you read in the Torah again and again, arguments about water. Today, we just turn on the tap. It's no big deal. But in the olden days, water was a huge resource, and therefore there was a real argument about it. And Avraham Avinu is arguing with the people of Avimelech. They argue about one well, and then another well, and a third well, and finally they get to the end of it. They finish. So now comes the following. We're on page 132. This is Parak Chof Vav, Pasuk Chof Vav, 26:26 in Bereshis. Avimelech came to him from this place where he lived, which was called Gerar. And some of his friends, and Fichol, his head of his army. So Yitzhak says to them, what'd you come to me for? You hated me, you sent me away, right? You told me earlier on, they say, get out of here, you're too big for us. You're too wealthy. You have too much influence. We need you out. So they kicked him out of the country. They literally kicked Yitzchak out of the country. So Yitzchak says, well, you kicked me out of the country and I come to come and have a meeting with me. That's a bit weird, don't you think? A bit awkward, this. So they say to him, Vayomru, and they say, Ra'o ra'inu, we saw, Ki yaya Hashem imach, that God is with you. Vanomen, we said, Tina Allah beinosei veineinu veinecha, let there be some form of promise between us, Menichur zabris imach, and we'll make a covenant between the two of us. So, I think it's Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky that says this. I think so. He says what we have over here is very interesting in the fact that Yitzchak Avinu wasn't the man that's all out there. He's not making a big splash. He's not having Kiruv seminars. He doesn't have this open door policy. He's not feeding people and trying to convince them of the truth of God. He just does his own thing. And yet, in the end of the day, even that, Vayomer, that they say to him, Ra'o ra'inu ki Hashem imach. We can tell God is with you. Sometimes you can tell God is with a person, you don't have to make a big fuss about it. You can see God is with him. And they can see, even though Yitzchak is not this big Mekarev, this big charismatic fellow making big speeches, etc., we say, but we can tell. We know God is with you. So we know, so we just go with it. So that's why I thought it was a beautiful idea, this idea that even quiet people, even people that don't make a splash, can still be a Kiddush Hashem. You could be a quiet Kiddush Hashem. You see a quiet individual that goes into a shop, that always does what he's supposed to. You could have a guy that comes to shul. Not every guy that comes to shul has to be on the executive. You could have a guy that sits in the back, but that comes every day, quietly, says his Kaddish, or davens, makes up the minyan, puts on his tefillin, does his thing, leaves, and everyone's like, the guy doesn't do much for the shul. And we're like, no, that's not true. Comes every day. Yes, he's a quiet member. He's not a vocal person. He's not somebody that makes a splash when he comes. But he's still a big Kiddush Hashem for the fact that he comes every day. It's an amazing thing. It's a tremendous thing to have somebody, even somebody like that comes all the time. Because they also make a difference. We don't only have to have loud people. Even quiet people can make a Kiddush Hashem. Yitzchak Avinu makes a Kiddush Hashem over here. Everybody looks up to Yitzchak and goes, you know what? This guy, maybe he's quiet. Maybe he doesn't talk much. Maybe he's not very friendly. Maybe he doesn't invite all people in. But you know what? We can still see God's with him. We can all still tell God's on his side. Ra'o ra'inu, we saw ki Hashem imach. God is with you. And we know God's with you. Changes everything. Beautiful idea. Okay. Right. Here comes an interesting idea. In the beginning of the Pasha, back to page 124. Rivka is barren, and finally she's expecting, and the children are running around in her stomach, and they're going crazy, which is not so easy, right? It's obviously not so easy. So remember when my wife, different kids had different temperaments, and it's funny, even in the stomach, in utero, they had a certain temperament. One of my kids was very, very jumpy. So he was very jumpy for many, many years as a child. And also we remember, like, my wife used to suddenly go, oh my goodness me, she's playing football in there or something. What is going on? The kids were jumping around like crazy. So he's jumping, these two kids, she's having this crazy amount of kicking going on inside her. And she doesn't know what it is, but she passes by outside base medrash and she feels some kicking. And she passes by outside the house of the Avodah Zarah and she feels more kicking. She's going, what in the world is going on with this kid? This kid is crazy. Base medrash, church, Avodah Zarah, God, what is going on? I saw, it's very cute. I saw Rav Zalman Sorotskin says, so why didn't she just stay home? Yeah, why did she have to pass by? Why didn't she just stay home? He said at home she got kicked by two people. Come on, get moving, get out of here. We don't want to sit here. Yeah. So why didn't she pass by she didn't want to pass by the church. She'd rather pass by she said she'd rather go to the base medrash because Yaakov kicks a lot less hard. He doesn't kick as hard as Esav does. Esav was a real kicker. Yeah. So here we go. So you have these two things, and she says, "Vatelech lidrosh Hashem." She goes to speak to God. She goes to speak to Shem ve'Eva. She speaks to the prophets and says, "What in the world is going on inside my stomach?" I have the weirdest pregnancy. I damn to have a child, and I got a child that walked by the house of a Vodazar, kicks like crazy. I walk by a shul, it kicks like crazy. I have no idea what's going on in my stomach. Can you tell me? Can you help me? Vayoma Hashem lo, and God says back to her through the prophets, Shnei goyim bevitnech. There are two nations in your stomach. Ushnei lu'umim, and two people, two nations, two regimes. We will split up from your insides, and one will be mightier than the other, and the older one will serve the younger one. That is what she is told. So she's thinking to herself, why is this kid so weird? And we're saying to her, this kid isn't weird, it's two kids, right? If sometimes you see one kid behaving one way and one kid behaving another way, you're like, okay, it makes sense, because this kid is that. When you see twins, if you have ever met identical twins and you don't know which one is who, and one of them gets up and says, how come this one speaks so well with the other one? Who is it? Yeah, you don't even know that you're dealing with two people. Then when you ask, oh, I didn't realize they were twins. Now that makes sense. Remember once walking over, there was a lady, I didn't know she was a twin. And I walked over to her and I said to her, because she looked just like the mother of one of the kids in my daughter's class. And I had to ask her, do you want me to take your kid home? I'm surprised you're here. I'm like, why are you here? I was supposed to take your kid home. She goes, why am I here? My kid. It's like, yeah. I was like, oh, you mean my sister? I'm like, oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, I'll take your sister's kids home. Thank you. It was very embarrassing, because when you don't know that they're twins and you meet the one and she looks exactly spitting image of the other, and just walk over to the other one and you don't know, you make a fool of yourself. So Shnei Goyim V'Vitnech, there are two kids in there, two different temperaments, two different people. But what's interesting, the word goyim, if you have a look at it, you see on the side, on the right-hand side in small lettering, on page 124, you'll find that the word goyim is written Gimel Yud Vav Mem. Goyim, but that's the way it's read. The way it's written in the Torah, and that's what you see over here, it says Gimel Yud Yud Mem, Shnei Geyim Bevitnech. So that's not a Litvak talking, Shnei Geyim Bevitnech, instead of Shnei Goyim, right? That's not what we meant. Shnei Geyim is what it says, and Gay, really, we're not talking about Bahrain now, right? We're not talking about Qatar. So we're not talking about Qatar. We're talking about over here, Gayim means people that are arrogant. Shnei Gayim Bevitnech, like Gaiva. Ga'oi ga'ah, the word means arrogant. So what does it mean two arrogances are in your stomach? And we speak about Rebbe and Antoninus that were both had in the summer and in the winter, had all the delicacies possible. Both the Rebbe and Mark Antony, they both had Shnei Gayim. What are we talking about? What does this mean that we have two people that are proud, two arrogances inside you? And I saw tonight, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky says a beautiful idea. He says, Shnei Goyim Bevitnech, or Shnei Geyim Bevitnech. Sorry, this wasn't from Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky. This is from the Maharal of Prague. The Maharal of Prague says the following idea. When it comes to, well, let's talk about science first. When we talk about modern society, nowadays, the thing that we are proud of, that modern society prides itself in, is its advancement of science and technology. And there's what to be proud of, right? Because 30 years ago, there was none of the things that we have today. If you look back 30 years ago, I'm trying to think now, 30 years ago, the internet was just starting up to become something. All these .coms didn't exist. Smartphones, mobile phones, MP3 players, special cameras, digital cameras, all that didn't exist. And suddenly in the last 20 or 30 years, what science has been able to create is unbelievable. But not only in creating technology, in medicine, the advances that we've made are unbelievable. In all sorts of different fields, we've created tremendous, tremendous stuff. And so therefore, there is an arrogance that comes with that. The arrogance, by the way, best described by people like Richard Dawkins, who say, if we have science, why do we need God? Right? Because I can explain everything scientifically, except that he can't, right? But he can attempt to explain everything scientifically. But if I have science, but you'll hear lots of people saying, If I have something called science, if I can explain to you why there's a sun scientifically, and I can explain to you through the Big Bang Theory why there's an earth and why there's a world and why there are cells, and now they're trying to tell you, now we know how the water got to earth. Because on that rock that they found in Bedfordshire, I think it was Bedfordshire they found it in. Where did they find the rock? Do you remember last week? Did anybody hear this in the news? The meteorite that they found it somewhere here in England. And, pardon? Yeah, I can't remember what they said. They said it. And on it, they found water from another planet. Similar to ours. And they said, now we know how water got here. Water got here through meteorites. So you're trying to tell me that this ocean was created, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean. This world is 70% water. And all that water came here on meteorites. Great theory, right? That's how it got here. That's one way of explaining it. I don't know that makes sense, right? No, but I guess if you have a problem saying, well, how will I scientifically explain that water got here? It came on a meteorite. There's a lot of meteorites that had to hit the earth. I mean, this earth would not be left. We'd be left with nothing of a planet if that many meteorites hit the earth. How much water, for goodness sake? I mean, do you know how much water there is? Do you know how much water there is out there? Plus, it still doesn't explain the great thing that we have going on between the water and the sun and the wind and the rain cycle and everything else that keeps us alive. It's pretty cool. Pardon? Well, it's all an accident. Of course it is, but we can explain it scientifically. It's a great scientific accident. Yeah? There's no reason this should have happened. It just happened. And that's the arrogance of science. And I think the arrogance of science got a real beating when it came to Corona. Because even now, you look back at Corona, we were talking about it. When Corona hit, unfortunately at the time, people were dying left, right, and center. I remember in the early days of Corona, the first month or two, we were worried. Stephen Epstein called me and he spoke to me. He says, we're worried we're not going to have enough graves in our Beis Islands. Right? That's how scary it was. Do you know how many Levias there were? Like over Pesach, there were like between 20 Levias or something like that. Over 7-8 days, there were people were dropping like flies. I mean, the fact that that you survived, Michael, is nothing short of a miracle. It really is nothing short of a miracle. Because I know a lot of people that were nowhere near as bad as you were that never made it out of the hospital. Bernard Morrison, when he went to the hospital, wasn't doing badly. Okay, maybe that's what it was. The other issues then yeah, that could very well be. But like when he went to a hospital, they didn't even say goodbye properly because they were like, well, I mean, okay, he's going to hospital, he'll be back soon. Right? They didn't think he's never coming back home. And many people like him. It's a crazy time. And now we look back and we say to ourselves, you know why so many people died in the first month or two of Corona? Because we had no idea what we're doing. And science was like, oh my God, what are we supposed to do with this? Totally overwhelmed. And God's like, see, I told you I haven't figured it all out. No, we'll figure this one out. All right, I'll twist it a little bit. As soon as we figured it, came Omicron. We figured out Omicron, came Delta. Yeah. We can keep on changing. God's like, I can keep on changing. I got lots of different variations and variants. Anytime you think you beat me in this game, it's like, all right, whatever. Like somebody who's playing chess against a grandmaster, the guy's like not even looking at it. So he's like, haha, check. He goes, there goes your queen and checkmate, right? That's basically how it goes. Every once in a while when things are looking slightly funny, he'll just like he'll turn about slightly. That's it. Got you. But there was a certain gaiva. There's a certain gaiva that comes as an arrogance that comes from science. There's an arrogance that comes from that side of belief. But there's an arrogance that comes on the other side also. That arrogance, and it's an interesting way of describing it almost, that arrogance is our arrogance. We as Jews are arrogant about our beliefs. Because if we weren't arrogant about our beliefs, we would have disappeared a long, long time ago. So people come to us and say, well, you know what? There's 1 billion Muslims out there, plus. There are 1 billion plus Christians out there. What do you have to say for yourself? Well, they got it wrong and we got it right. Isn't that pretty arrogant? Do you think that's pretty arrogant that this little people, well, we are how many people? 13 million people, 15 million people, of which how many of them are really believing Jews? Do you know what I mean? It's crazy. America is a wasteland. You think, wow, America has got so many Jews. Do you know what's going on in America? Do you know that in America, 3 out of every 4 marriages are to non-Jews? Right? Do you know that in America, only maybe 10% of the people there are Orthodox? That in America, you're more likely to find a Christmas tree in a Jewish home in December than to find a kosher kitchen? That's the America that people live in. So people say, wow, America's got all these Jews. Well, I mean, it's not all these Jews. It's a very small percentage. Between 10 and 15% of Jews are actually believing. The others, give it 3-4 generations, they'll be gone. They'll be gone because they're all marrying out. They're all disappearing. Yes. Well, we can discuss that, but I think that would upset a lot of people, right? But you have all these people so we left not with 15 million people. If you want to look at the Jews that are true believing Jews all around the world, how many do you have already? 3 million. 5 million. I don't even believe it's 5 million, but let's call it 5 million. So you got 5 million believing Jews that are looking straight at over 1 billion Muslims, 1 billion Christians, and well over 1 billion atheists, and saying to all of them, you've all got it wrong, we got it right. What kind of arrogance does it take to look everybody in the face and say, we're the minority, but like massively, and we still believe we're right and you're wrong? And there is no compromise. We don't say, you know what? We're right, but Christians also have what to say for themselves. Or we're right, but you know, the Muslims also have got a point. We don't say that. True believing Jews say we're right and nobody else has got a point. And any other good points that the Christians or the Muslims have in their religion come from us, right? The prayer and the tzedakah and the love your neighbor as yourself. A lot of the great bits of the New Testament, the great bits of the Quran, they're just very, very similar to what we have. They're just another copy of us. So we say we're the original. We got it. We got the truth. We're right. And science says, you're right, you're crazy. And we look at science and say, no, you're crazy. So where's the lie? Shnei goyim. That's not Shnei goyim, 2 nations. But Shnei goyim. You have 2 arrogant people that are going up against each other. The arrogance of religion, of truth, versus the arrogance of science. So where does that lie? Where does that leave us? So he says very interesting that there is Torah im derech eretz and Torah v'derech eretz. Torah together with science, everything else, and Torah and science. He says, if I have Torah as supreme, I can then look at science and everything else and use it to bolster myself. Science isn't worthless. Nobody says science is worthless. But science on its own is worthless. If you believe this is all that's out there, that the reason we have a world is because we had a big bang, and the reason we have water is because it's been brought over meteorites, and the reason we have cells is because after millions and billions of years, finally something came together just right, then that's worthless. That's all worthless. But if you say, no, we got a God, and God gave us a Torah, and he gave us mitzvahs, and he gave us a purpose, and he gave us a reason to live. And then you say, you know what? But science has something wonderful to offer. Science has a computer to offer where I can sit over here in this shul and I can talk into this computer and it's being broadcast to people all around the world. That's nothing. No, it's not nothing. That's wonderful. But it's a wonderful addendum to Torah. That's not nothing. And if somebody says science is a wonderful thing because, okay, again, this you can argue about it, whether they've done it right or wrong. But science is not a wonderful thing. They've created a vaccine. So somebody will say, no, it's not safe, whatever. Let's not even talk about that. Let's not go down that route. Let's assume that the vaccine is safe, as most people would say vaccine is safe. So science created a vaccine. Wonderful. That's a wonderful thing. We don't look down and say, science. No, we'll take the vaccine. But we'll say, I understand there's a God. I understand for whatever reason he brought this plague. and he's given science the ability to find a cure so quickly for it. And we thank him so much for giving the scientists the understanding and the ability to get over with it, get on with it so quickly. And so science is not nothing, but science, when accompanied by the real truth of the Torah, is quite useful. Science, when it's done on its own, it's not very impressive. It can do lots of great stuff. You can create planes and cars and high-speed trains and computers and internets and mobile phones, et cetera, but you can't create meaning. Science can't give you meaning. That's not what it is. Science can give you stuff, but not meaning. So we say we have meaning. We have truth. And then we have science that can also help us out, which is beautiful because we can take the two together. And that's Rebbe and Antoninus. You have the two of them. That you can take those two people, Antoninus, who was Marcus Antony, who was a Talmud, who was a student of Rebbe. So that goes together. They can go together. You can have them together. But in the stomach of Rivka Imenu, you know what happens between those two people, Esav and Yaakov? They're fighting like crazy. I'm right. No, I'm right. Can't hack it next to each other. Just can't manage it. Just they have to get out of there. I got to get away from you. I can't sit with you. You're crazy. I'm crazy. You're the crazy one. Yeah. You'll see. I think when you watch there was a debate many years ago between Lord Sachs and between Richard Dawkins, and you can see Richard Dawkins. He's got this contempt for Lord Sachs. He doesn't sit there comfortably. He does this. There's like a lack of respect there. Oh, so you believe X, Y, Z. That's really there's this contempt there, this sneer, this cynicism. It's horrible. It's disgusting, right? I think Lord Sachs spoke to him a lot more respectfully than he spoke to Lord Sachs. But there's this feeling of like, I don't want to sit with this religious guy. I don't want to debate with him, a low life. This guy doesn't believe in science. He doesn't believes in all these archaic, crazy things. And we say it's the other way around. I don't want to sit with you. I don't want to believe in your stuff. I'm sitting here in this space meditation. This is where my belief, this is where reality is. There's lots of great stuff out there that's useful as a tool to help me with my true reality, which is in here. And that's what Yaakov Avinu is. And that's the arrogance of Yaakov Avinu, who looks out at the rest of the world and says to them, I got the truth. Everybody else out there doesn't have truth. They got lots of interesting stuff to share. But there's only one truth. And I've got it. And I'm proud of that truth. And I'm not going to buckle under no circumstances. That's Yaakov. That's the game. That's the arrogance of Yaakov. To fight off the arrogance of science and the arrogance of the rest of the world. Okay, we'll say one short idea still here. And then we'll leave on that. So an interesting idea that Rav Zalman Sorotskin says, Vayidalu Anarim, the young men became older, and Asa becomes Isha, the outside Ishsada becomes a man who knows how to hunt, a man of the field, and Yaakov was just a simple man, Yoshev Alam, who sat in the tents of the Torah and sat and learned. And it's interesting, the different ways of understanding, but it's interesting to note over here, says Rav Sorotskin, that when Yitzchak saw Esav leaving the yeshiva and going out on his own, that doesn't mean that he's just gone awry. But it means you got to keep looking. You know, you got a son that's moved off from the path that you've set for him into another path. Why don't you check up on him? Why don't you see what he's doing? Why do you just let go? And that's what Rabbi Zalman says. You see that Yitzchak doesn't seem to be following up on him. And because you're not following up on him, therefore he's able to fool him. He's able to get past him. He's able to do all sorts of things. And Yitzchak is willing to give him the brachas, the blessings. He said, this kid is great. And he's like, he has no idea what I'm doing. Right? Because he's not checking. He's not looking. And unfortunately, I think I'm going to have to be short about this, but there's a lot to be said about it. Plenty of parents out there are just plain naive. They're being naive about what the kids are getting up to. They're being naive about what they're allowing the kids to get up to, what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. It's crazy what goes on out there. It was weird. I'll tell you a weird story, true story. I was walking with my kids yesterday. I went to pick up my son who's in year 6. So he's 10 years old. This is a 10-year-old kid, soon to be 11. So a 10-year-old kid, and we're walking down the street. We've just left his school, and we're going to the car. It was raining, so I took him home. He likes to walk home, but I said, no, it's raining. You have to come home with me. And we're walking down the street. He goes, smells like weed. And I'm like, this 10-year-old kid knows what weed smells like. That's weird. That's crazy. Sure you can. You can smell it. You can smell it. Yeah. It says, it's got a horrible smell. I don't like the smell of it. Lots of people don't like the smell. You can smell it. I know outside my house also, there must be somebody in the houses next to us that smokes this stuff. Because I come home at night and you smell it as I come inside. It's like, who's this stupid potter that keeps on smoking outside? Pardon? You smell it a lot. It's become very, very common around here. But I say to myself, look, my kid is 10 years old. He knows what this smells like. I didn't know what it smelled like when I was 10 years old. But that means that my kid is sort of a lot more clued in than I am. But what it means also is, and I need to be a lot more clued in also. I, as a parent, need to be clued in. I, as a parent, need to realize that these are the kind of things that can happen. And I need to be there. I need to understand, hey, wait a second. What's going on over here? What does he know of? How do I keep a lid on this? How do I make sure that even though he knows what it is, he doesn't go anywhere near it? Because that's really, really important. But if my parents yell like, oh yeah, my kid knows what weed is, but whatever. So then you're being naive. You're just looking away and say, yeah, whatever. My kid would never do this. My kid would never visit an X-rated site on his mobile phone. It's just not his type. Really? Yeah, are you so sure? You're so certain? Your kid wouldn't smoke something he wasn't supposed to, and he wouldn't do something he wasn't. Where are you as a parent? Where is your responsibility? Why aren't you looking after your kids actively instead of saying, well, yeah, you know what, he's gone a different. If there's something that is, especially when there are certain things that are flags where you say, hey, this kid is starting to do things slightly differently. Okay, there's nothing wrong with different, but check up on it. Right? It doesn't say, oh, it's so terrible that he left the yeshiva. Yeshiva wasn't for Esav. It wasn't. Okay? But on the other hand, to then say, well, to let him go unchecked and just do whatever he wants is also not right. As a parent, that's not right. Don't just say, oh yeah, well, I can't really tell my kids what to do anyway, so I just let my kids do whatever they want to. Can't just let go. I think a lot of parents nowadays, we've turned into this very, very passive, almost meek form of parenting, where the kids dictate to the parents what they want to do. And they tell the parents, I'm going somewhere. No, you're not. Yes, I am. Are you going to stop me? Well, I can't really. Okay, see you. Bye. What's happened? It's because we become like a weak generation that just gets trodden all over. Pardon? It's getting worse and worse. And it means we as parents we need to be clued in, and we need to be on top of it, and we need to see what's going on. Now, you might be right that we cannot stop our kids doing certain things, especially as they get older. We definitely can't stop them doing certain things. But it means at least knowing that there is such a thing out there, that there are people out there that do these things, and to know, well, what is my kid getting up to? And having those conversations with them and trying to get that kid to understand this isn't right. Instead of going, he's not doing what he's supposed to, but you know what? He's probably not getting up to anything bad. Well, didn't work with Esav. Doesn't work for many other people. That's the ideas I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate all those people who joined me on Facebook Live, on Zoom, and on Tiny Time. Want to get in touch? DavidEisenberg@gmail.com. Look forward to Mitzvah Hashem to seeing you next week.